You are now live.
Brilliant. So welcome everyone to our FBS Chat this evening. We've got Pauline Fynn. Welcome, Pauline. Thank you for taking the time out to have a conversation with us.
Well, I'm looking forward to having a chat with you, and thank you for having me on tonight.
You're welcome. Obviously, let us know a bit about yourself, how you got into this field of work in the first place.
Well, for the past 9 years, 10 years next year, I have been working in the criminal justice system. So I purely got into it accidentally. I never realized that was where I was going to end up. So I then worked my way into becoming an offender manager, working to changing people's behavior, whether they've been in prison sentences or community sentences. So within that period, I worked in various areas of that particular section of the criminal justice system. And then I went on to, which I think is great experience, working in various magistrates and crown courts, writing reports for the judiciary. So, again, that's another side. During that period, at some point back in 2014, I personally became, I got involved in a brief relationship, and unbeknown to me, even though I was a professional, I did not spot the signs of a DV perpetrator. So I ended up dating someone for a very brief time, for 8 weeks, and I then realised, Pauline, get out, run. So I ran, and he was 2.5 years. So that kind of experience was really unpleasant at that time. But actually, I can now look back and I think, wow, what invaluable experience that understanding how a perpetrator's mind works, what their next steps are going to be, but you understand and empathize what a victim goes through in an intimate partner relationship. I mean, you and I both know that domestic abuse doesn't just occur in intimate partner, but it could be father and daughter, or son and grandmother, if there's anyone in that family unit. So whilst it's unpleasant, it was experience that I think it needs to be had for me to be where I am today.
Yeah. And do you know what? I often, it's often, you hear people say, well, how can you be sort of sucked into a relationship like that, and whatever criticism people place at the survivors of domestic abuse. But you were kind of someone working in the field of perpetrators of domestic abuse. And yet
at that particular time, I hadn't been working with perpetrators of domestic abuse. So I hadn't spotted the signs. What I was doing at that time, this is another facet to me. Actually, I was a campaigner for a particular political party. So I was getting ready, I was preparing to stand for local election. So how I met this perpetrator was he'd obviously got my details through as a campaigner, and then we built up that friendship. And if I'm honest with you, I should have spotted the signs, because if you had seen this person, you would have thought, and as all police officers had said to me after, Mrs. Fynn, what did you see in such and such? Right? You would never, honestly. But actually, on a serious note, okay, forget putting to myself. A lot of these DV perpetrators are charmers. They hide very, very well until they have the victim, dare I say it, under their thumb.
Yeah, it's almost like an angler putting the bait out there and hooking people in.
It is. Yeah. They spot. You know what? They actually spot victims. They suck them in because they can see there's a vulnerability. That's how they do it.
And when so if anyone's listening and they're kind of thinking, well, I don't know what to look out for, what gave you those warning signs as you were going through that relationship?
Well, a lot of jealousy. If I turned up late to him, he would go off on one. If I was going somewhere else, he'd expect me. If I was even going to work, he'd expect me to message him. jealousy. He showed his colours very, very quickly, whilst others may take a lot longer and may actually get to the point of when they've got married to them, when it's too late to even back out, and when you're, even worse when you're pregnant. But he showed his true colours very, very quickly. He also he obviously he particularly had mental health issues, an alcohol problem. Again, he hid that very well. But every perpetrator has even though they are textbook, they show different sides at different times in their relationships. But it's just being a bit mindful about, when there's jealousy coming in, when they're asking you to contact them the minute, wherever you're going, monitoring you, trying to isolate you from your family, friends. It's sometimes there's not even violence in there. It's just the control, and actually I think that's by far more damaging than the violence, with a constant and ongoing controlling behavior, emotional abuse.
And did you see the jealousy, Pauline, as a sort of I don't know, I mean, obviously he would have tried to persuade you that was something because he cared about you?
Shall I be honest?
Yeah.
I look back and I think how naive I was. I was completely naive, completely. It was only when I showed my senior officer that one of the text messages, they said, "Uh-oh, Pauline, you're dealing with a DV perpetrator here." I was completely naive. Even though I was working in the system, I hadn't actually come across at that stage in my career a DV perpetrator, and that was 6 years ago. Now I can spot them a mile away. The radars are constantly working, right? So I can absolutely spot them a mile away. I know. It is. You cannot believe, I'm 53 now. How old was I back then? 46, 47. I cannot believe at that age I was so naive. And, even still to this day, I just think to myself, when I hear, oh, here we go, another DV case, you just think, where is it in the sanctity of a relationship or a marriage that they feel they can treat their partners like this? I mean, it is appalling. I think also the numbers of violence and abuse from a child to a parent, that's also increasing. And also, isn't it? And also siblings as well.
Yeah. And so interesting. Now you say you've got this kind of radar and you can spot them a mile off. So if I'm sort of concerned about a relationship that I'm in, what is this radar telling me? What should I be looking out for?
It's how can I say it's again it's the jealousy, the controlling, the manipulation, things like that. It's just you'll just know it. It's when they're trying to stop you from going out to your family and friends. It's not normal behavior. That's actually the issues lie with a perpetrator. And not with the victim.
And they try to persuade you that your friends and families ain't really good for you. That
exactly. And eventually over time they tell you that they're worthless. I mean, I'm quite a strong woman, so it is. My one couldn't get me down, but not every person is strong. So and they're led to believe no one else will have them, and that they're worthless. But actually, they are absolutely. Who the ones that really are insecure? It's the perpetrator, because they're the ones over the years, through their own learned behavior from when they were growing up, they were made to feel worthless. Hence, that's why they're taking all that anger and that emotion out on and the control. But that's not love, and love should not hurt.
Yeah, we just had a comment. Too often we take responsibility for a relationship with a violent person. Their whole MO is to present as charming in order to get the relationship going. When they have sucked us in, the real person starts to become apparent.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think we need, it isn't the victim's fault, because there they are. We think they're the Prince Charming. It's victims should not blame themselves, whether it's a female victim, whether it's a male victim, or it's a young person, same sex. They should not feel it's their fault. It's actually the perpetrator that actually needs to go and get that help and have some sort of counselling dealing with what they have witnessed growing up, or it's happened to them in a relationship. And actually, victims can pick up learned behavior from the perpetrator and then take it on to the next relationship. But what we need to do is to break that cycle. And we have a whole nation of very damaged individuals. But as I said, not everyone as strong as me. So, and then the only impact it really had on me was 2.5 years of negativity, of going backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards. But that's why I'm really strong and really determined to make sure that with what I'm trying to organise, that it's a very successful program in a very different approach, so they can actually start to live an independent life, make sure that victims become those survivors, do not go back to those perpetrators, but also do not attract similar kind of characters in the next time. And a lot of people make those mistakes, and it's about what I want to do is to change that. Look at it as a transmitter. Like the brain is as a transmitter. You've got the wrong frequency. You need to change that frequency. So really, what we want to do is to change that mindset, so they don't attract the same kind of person into their life.
Yeah. And what you're saying about the it's never the survivor's fault, but you also said earlier that the perpetrators seem to know or sense who would be a good target.
Yeah.
What is it? What is it they're looking for? What is it that they think? This is someone that I can, I don't know,
manipulate,
control or coerce or manipulate.
Right. They look for vulnerabilities, but actually, I think a lot of these male perpetrators, I'm going to go for the male perpetrators, they're looking to find a strong woman.
Oh.
I believe they're looking to find a strong woman that they can power and control, and to manipulate and to bring down and to destroy. That's what I believe.
Wow. Because I would have said, you'd have said the opposite of that, looking for someone frail and maybe a bit timid that they can control.
I think maybe some of them do that, but they also in some ways look to find a strong woman as well.
Because that's more empowering, isn't it?
It's a challenge for them to find someone strong, and actually to get someone who is less outspoken, doesn't know how to stand up, hasn't got that, what's the word for it? Oh gosh, what's the word for it? Where they just they can't possibly, they're not strong enough to think for themselves, or they're shy and they're reserved. To them that's not a challenge. So they end up looking for a strong woman to try and manipulate and to destroy. But I'm not saying for all cases, but they do look. It's
That's really interesting you say that, Pauline, because you're right. I suppose it's almost like a sense of triumph that I've managed to overcome someone who's really strong and independent, and I've managed to sort of break them down.
No, exactly. It gives them a sense of, it's empowering for them, but it gives them a sense of power and control.
Yeah. Wow.
Honestly, their behaviour, they seem to be very textbook. Every circumstance is different, but they seem to be programmed that way. And I just think, wow, how can you all be like this?
So after your experience, how did you use that moving forward? What did you do from there on?
Right, I decided to start my own business, and I think, as I said earlier on, you'll find a lot of people that have gone through trauma like that, they then start their own organizations. So I've been working on something for the last 6 years, and then over the last 2 to 3 years, it's suddenly exploded. So I've started, there's going to be 2 organizations interlinked: Believe Globally Community Interest Company and the Believe Foundation. So on one side, we're going to be providing educational material and training packages, for children, the education system, and we're also looking to make the app version of the books. And then on the other side, on the registered charity, what we're doing is looking at an intervention like no other. So literally a journey for victims where they have, I don't want to go into it too exactly what kind at this moment, because we're still putting it all together, but how can I put it, complementary therapies as well as life mapping, which is like counseling. And actually what we want to do is to get them through that and heal them, not just signpost them to housing and then just a 5-minute wonder on a program, but actually put them through a long-term support. We had a meeting last week with one of our patrons, and we all agreed that short-term support just is not going to work. Domestic abuse is a real complex issue. So many times I've heard people say, well, why does he or she go back to that person? Well, it's not easy because they've been manipulated to believe they're worthless. No one else is going to have them. And it's small step by step to help, victims make that change. Sometimes victims don't have any other alternatives. Maybe they're stuck in accommodation with the perpetrator. If they leave them, where do they go? You know that there's a shortage of housing in this country, So we are going to provide an alternative means of empowering victims to be able to stand on their own 2 feet and help them every step of that way. And even if once they go through all that, actually continue that support, even if it's a phone call once a month. Hey, how you doing? Are you okay? Because a few months down the line, once they've gone through all that, you don't know, they might end up going back to that perpetrator, the perpetrator to charm them, or they might end up finding someone else on the same kind of character. We want to completely help them break that cycle. So what we are going to be doing is looking at a whole person's health and well-being, and not just putting them on an online program. I think it takes much more than that. It's a very big vision that I've got, and I think what I've done is use my whole, not just my personal experience, but actually my working experience as well, to put in place the kind of organisations and programs to come in. I'm really excited by it, actually. I'm more excited than I am for myself, because sorry.
I was going to say, you don't seem that excited by it, Pauline. It's not coming across that.
No, I am really excited, because you know what? You know what it's like when you've got your baby, and you know that you're going to make such a difference to people's lives. You just know that. And I can't wait to finally, after all this time, and you know how much hard work that goes into it. It doesn't just happen overnight. I can't wait to when it fully comes out. But not just we are Believe, but actually I can't wait for us to be working with other organizations, because that's what it's all about. It is about being united, working together.
Oh, you're frozen, Pauline.
Pauline frozen.
You haven't frozen, Joe.
She got so excited that the internet froze.
Yeah, I'm just going to read out while Pauline's coming back to us. Someone we both know wrote, many women feel it is their fault. Society asks questions such as, why does she stay with him? They should be asking, why is he doing it? Why don't we stop it? It is that conditioning that leads many to repeating cycles, which you and I both know is absolutely true.
If the survivors think it's their fault, that just means that the perpetrator's done a really good job on them.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, these people are not good for you. I'm the one. You can't cope without me. um, even sometimes turning the children against them, so the children become pawns in this game. And it is about breaking that cycle.
Yeah.
And we've always said that.
But like you said, it is about removing your loved ones, so you don't have that connection anymore, because they're almost your backbone, your spine. They're your support network. So get rid of the support network, and then that way you've still got me. Everyone else has left you.
Yeah, you're isolating someone to feel that you're the only person you're the only one there that I can rely on, and it's very subtle. It's something that the perpetrators will suck you in gently and make you feel that they're the only one that cares for you and looks out for you, and that everyone else is taking advantage of you. So I'm the only one that you should actually be listening to. It would be really interesting to hear from Pauline. Hopefully she comes back about.
Hi.
Oh, here she goes. Hi, love.
I don't know what happened there.
Yeah. I said to Aisha, you got so excited, the internet crashed. But me and Aisha was just talking about how survivors shouldn't feel guilt and blame, because the perpetrators would just know what they're doing, and they suck you in and they make you feel that it's your fault. That's the whole point of it. I can blame you for the situation we're in, and it'd be really interesting to know your thoughts on the justice system in all of this, because I know you obviously it's great that we get families to safety in a refuge, but that's just the start of the work, don't you think? There's got to be a lot more support after that.
Well, I don't just think after that. I think before that. I think we should be, and this is what I'm trying to do, is to actually get program. I know that there are other organisations doing what they need to do, but what they're not doing is what I'm planning on doing, is bringing out in a way that children will understand. I cannot understand when we're putting programs in place once the horse is bolted.
Yeah.
Right. There is when someone has been sentenced, whether it's prison or whether it's a community sentence, and their offending is linked to their poor decision making, then they may be imposed with what's called a thinking skills program, to address the decisions. So, and how they can change things. But why do that once the horse is bolted? Why isn't there something like that in the schools right now? So that's what I'm trying to do, so that we don't have to see these youngsters. I want these youngsters to recognise, a potentially harmful situation, whether they are putting the harm on someone else, or whether the harm is coming to them, or whether it's a home. But I just cannot understand why there's interventions like that when someone's already committed an offence. We need to be doing things beforehand to prevent going into that situation. Prevention is better than cure.
Yeah. So and
cheaper. Sorry, Joe.
Yeah.
And cheaper.
Yeah.
It is cheaper
Because money talks, doesn't it, Pauline?
It is cheaper, and I absolutely believe, I really, really believe, if we invested in bit money here and now, in the long term, we're going to be saving a lot of money, and that's why.
Millions.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's why I believe what I plan to do, what I want to do with my team, is to provide a long-term program with an alternative that isn't there available right now. So it's going to be amazing. But no, I've been in court. I've seen people, get sentenced going on these programs. But I think that we need to do a lot more work. And look, the numbers are going. And let me shut that down. I think I switched on my phone when we got cut off. Let me just switch this. Oh, shush. It is. No, we need to be doing not just more work. We need to be what we need to be doing is focusing on voluntary work before they get into that system. you know, these adults, voluntary work, if they're not prepared to change their behavior, then it's the criminal justice system time. I think that's where they're also lacking, you know, they're lacking in, or it's not advertised enough, voluntary work or organizations that will help perpetrators recognize their behavior before they go in the system.
Yeah. And there may be some perpetrators that have recognized that what they're doing isn't actually helpful, isn't really, it's something that I want to change. But I guess unless there's sort of a system in place where you don't have to end up in the criminal justice system to get on a perpetrator program, that you can go on it voluntarily, I guess we need to be looking at that. And it's interesting you say about the prevention and I think you're talking about young children in schools, and because obviously if I'm living in a home where basically this is just normal, you know, shouting, screaming isn't, I don't know any different. How are we? How can we support? How are you, or what plans do you have of that really early intervention?
Well, we've got that book, Freddie Learns to Behave. And what I've done is put lesson plans and guidance in there, but actually to assist teachers asking the right questions to the children. So children can relate, you know, they can use a story, a way that they can understand to relate to home life. And then the teachers asking those right questions so that they can recognize risk at an early opportunity. So then within that book, we've got support lines for the Nspcc and the child line if anyone should need that help. So what I've done is I've used sibling rivalry. You know how brothers and sisters fight? I've used it in that way where young children will understand. So that I feel, for me, that was the right way to address it. You know, it can't really address domestic abuse in any other way, but in a way like that for a children's story. So I'm really, really, really excited. And what I want to do is to get that book in an app version to make it more accessible to people. And you know how children are with their parents' mobiles. You know, the parent will give it and they'll start playing. So we want to make it a little bit more, to take a very serious subject and make it fun and easy learning for them.
Yeah.
It's not hard either. It's any if a child has got learning difficulties, it's easy enough for any child that's got learning difficulties. So it's got whilst it looks fun, actually there's a very strong silent message there.
And it's a lovely conversation starter. Oh, did I just echo? For family members as well.
Yes.
You know, as well as schools, but for family mentors, from my family members. You know, it's definitely a conversation starter in a very subtle way. So when is a hardback being released, Pauline?
COVID actually has delayed things. So I'm going to be looking at next year. Actually, strangely enough, this year, you would have thought that this year wouldn't have been kind to us, simply because of what's been going on. But actually, it's helped us put things properly together. So I'm looking at next year, absolutely next year. I'll be campaigning. I'll be working really, really hard to make sure this comes out. I can't wait, because I think there's going to be more to it. There's going to be more things coming from this.
Do you have a sample of the book there, Pauline? Because you did last time we spoke.
Would you like me to show you the sample?
It's only us.
Yeah, it's only us, Pauline. No one else is watching.
If you're watching, close your eyes.
No, it's fine. No, it's absolutely fine, because this is not the end result. Okay, so this is what it is. So it is. Look, I love my little character, right? And let me stress something here. This is not about obesity. Okay, I have to stress that out. You've got to make it fun for kids. Okay, you've got to make it really enjoyable, and actually you've got to have a diverse range of characters, which we have. We've got a skinny person, and we've got a slightly overweight person. We've got different cultures going in there, so we made it fun. And actually, the butterfly, if you notice, the butterfly represents transformation.
Yeah, metamorphosis.
Yeah. So the butterfly comes in not just in the book, but also in our logo. Believe globally, it's got the butterfly because we're transforming people's lives.
I'm super excited about that. I'm really, really excited about the book. I've got to say,
it's really lovely. I'm just finishing up on it. I think there's going to be more to it. There's going to be more books coming out because you know that domestic abuse is multifaceted, and it can affect mental health. It can then you can then see stalking, online stalking. So we're going to be addressing different areas with different stories, with the characters, and more with further on books. It's taken a long time, but it's, what was that saying? Anything worthwhile never comes easy.
Yeah.
Never comes easy. So I can't wait to help victims.
And actually, talking about helping victims, but you've also worked with perpetrators, haven't you?
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about the work that you've done there? And actually, in comparison, and I know you shouldn't compare, but what's it been like working with perps and victims?
Right. I actually think it's harder working with victims. I do. It is with perpetrators. If they misbehave, you can put enforcement on them. You can recall them, or you can breach them. So that's the difference with the victim. If they're shouting and screaming at you, you can't enforce them at all. You just have to sort of just let them get their emotions, their frustrations out. Regarding the perpetrators, some have been some of them have been really, really nice. Some of them have been really unpleasant. I've been working with perpetrators for 9 years, and not just DV perpetrators, but people that have committed the lower end of sexual offences, burglary. I've gone through DV perpetrators, so I've enjoyed working with them, and I actually think the work is easier than working with a victim. Would you believe? Or maybe because I got used to 9 years of working with them. But again, some of them have been victims of their own circumstances.
Yeah.
And where I'm really passionate about, particularly with the perpetrators, the young people.
Yeah.
So some of them looked at me as mother hen.
I can see why.
Yeah, you can imagine me as mother hen, can't you?
And you know what? I think obviously that end of the work has to be done. Otherwise, perpetrators will just go on and find more and more victims.
It is, but here's my say on this. Too much money is being plowed into perpetrators and not enough for victims. And victims are always treated like sloppy seconds or a second thought. Victim of any crime did not ask to be a victim of their crime, of someone else's bad behavior. So we need to start to be a little bit more fair on victims in this country. It isn't right and it isn't fair.
Yeah. And in terms of the criminal justice system, Pauline, what changes? Because obviously you've had that experience. What changes would make it more beneficial for the victims to come forward? Because often a lot of them may think, well, what's the point? Because no one's going to believe me. It's going to be protracted and takes forever to get anything sorted.
Right, okay. I think right now is a really, really difficult time. What with trials being put back because of the COVID. So victims can't move forward. Can't move forward in their lives. What also is not helpful as well, but then you can also understand it in some cases where victims will not support the prosecution, and they will continue to remain with the perpetrator, or they will just completely retract from their convictions, and not convictions, from their reports to the police. And at that point, you can understand the authorities getting exasperated because they want to help the victims, but the victims weren't, wanting to go out and to do that. They do. Authorities, and all authorities really, really, really do want to help the victims. But I've been there, I understand it, but we have to get to a point with victims as well that sometimes they have to also try to help themselves as well. We can give them the olive branch, but if they won't take it time and time and time and time again, what do you but patience. It's hard. It's really, really hard.
Yeah. And
So,
I guess if anyone was to use the word innocent victims in this, it's the children that are having to witness this, and the damage that it's having on them.
The children, I think, are now being recognised as victims in their own right. Whether they witness it or endure it, they are victims, and they then later on either perpetrate or they continue to become victims themselves. You know what? That's no way. That's not a life for children. And I'm sure some of the people that you see where you are, they've lashed out in anger because this is what they had to endure themselves. And that's, I don't understand how, and then the parent who did that had gone through it themselves. So it's a vicious cycle. We need to be breaking that cycle. It can't keep going on for generations, and actually it's costing the country money, isn't it? As well as, whether it's NHS and then obviously people getting killed, in intimate relations. We need to break that cycle.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, it's. I mean, I'm sure someone's done their calculations of the costs in monetary terms, but the emotional costs are just enormous. These.
Well, the mental health services it's not just for adults who are recovering from domestic abuse and having to, deal with whatever they have to deal with, but also it's the children that are being referred to CAMS. There's a very, very, very long waiting list, and generally the referrals that we receive from CAMS to family-based solutions are because the children have witnessed domestic abuse, and it's behavioural issues. It's just they've normalised that behaviour rather than having mental health issues. And there is a fine line there, and not dealt with as behavioural issues can easily turn into mental health issues. So there is a massive strain on the services.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question now. How do you deal with it when you see children that have suffered like that? I mean, it would just absolutely tear my heartstrings here.
Yeah. And you know what, like Aisha was saying, it's I think what we get a sense of from the work that we do is that the children often are afraid and want to protect, and it gets to that point where they start to lose respect for the carers, in the sense that, why haven't you protected us from this? Why haven't you done something about it? And then it just becomes, you almost become immune to it. I've seen video clips of children having a meltdown, kicking their parents, and the sibling is on their phone as if nothing is happening, as if it is just all
it's just so normal to them.
Right, here's something else I'm going to ask you, and I'm writing it down because I think this is really important, right? Parental alienation, where the abuser actually uses the children as weapons and turns that child or children against the innocent parent. I mean, how disgusting, how absolutely disgusting. And the court, I want to know why this country has recognized this, because these are not isolated incidents. This happens time and time and time again, right? And actually, I want to know why this isn't in the domestic abuse bill. Why
Absolutely, completely. And you know what? Most of the victims that we're working with, you know, they're doing so well. They're really trying. They're trying to recover. They've gone back into jobs. You know, they're finding their routine, and then the child goes away to dad or mum for a weekend, comes back, and then that's it. You've got to start all over again. And then that, you know, then it takes them a week for the child to calm and go back to normality. Then they go to dad's again, you know, a fortnight later, and then it's your mum's like this. What's your mum doing? Is she talking to guys on the phone? If she's, you've got to let me know. You're man of the house. Blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
And then, you know, and that's how easy it is for child to parent abuse to happen. It's so goddamn easy. But what do you do?
Well, it is
like you said, if the law is not working on the victim's side and the children's side, there's not much you can do.
What worries me, can I just say, is the division is long lasting between the innocent parent and the children from that abuser, because that is a drip feed effect. Right? And then the division can last for many years. I want to know why that system isn't recognised that actually that's part of child abuse and domestic abuse. Why? I want that question answered, actually.
Anyone know the answer to that? Anyone watching?
Well, I was just going to say to Aisha, there's been a case that's been going on for years, and because and I'm going to say it, because social services say the dad has parental responsibility, it's okay for him to have visitation and keep poisoning the kids against his mum, and this can't be right.
And there's hard evidence that this man is poisoning his children. I mean, he's basically telling them to their face, you know, to the system's face, I am saying this to my children. That's how hard the evidence is. And he's on the birth certificate.
Social services should be protecting those children from harm, emotional harm. So why aren't they? So really, they're not protecting those children.
No.
Well, social workers, they should be getting the training on understanding what this is all about.
Yeah.
I spoke to a family last night, and I spoke to the mum and the kids, and I mean, it touched my heart because it was such a lovely family, really lovely family. And what were their hopes moving forward? To spend more time with their mum, who is a single mum, been in a domestic violence relationship, works 5 days a week, drops her kids off, brings them back, cooks for them. The kids were saying, it's like a buffet here, sir. She comes home and she cooks all this food. They absolutely loved her. They wanted to spend more time with her. And during the summer holidays, dad had them for a few weeks and wouldn't return them. And she was obviously devastated. And he's still trying to influence the male of the house, who's a young boy, to run away from home. Just keep running away from home because you're my little prince. And, you know, I almost felt like crying for her, because she's doing everything that she can, and the children love her to bits. But there's this one person in the background trying to destroy all that. And, you know, it's going through the courts now, and I don't know what they will decide. But for me, if you're known as a perpetrator of domestic violence, you need to prove that to me that you can have contact with your kids and not poison them against their custodial parent. It's just not on.
So he's going to go through a CAFCAS.
Yeah.
No, they're over 5.
Yeah. But it's just a story that we hear time and time again, like you were saying, where they'll go to the custodial parent for a week, and like Aisha's saying, what's mum doing? You know, it's her fault that we broke up, right? You know, she was this or he was that, because obviously we know that male victims are also coming forward now, which is really, really good to see. But it's these poor kids are bounced from one to the other, and just total confusion about who am I supposed to listen to.
What do you think? What do you think this country should be doing to protect those kids?
I think if you've been known as as a domestic violence perpetrator against the mother of your children, let's not forget, you may have fallen out of love with this person, but she's still the mother of your kids, and she has control. She has custody, or the father of your kids, and they have custody. If you can't say, right, you know what, for you to have contact with your kids, you need to prove that it's something that you deserve, not just because you're genetically related, but because you're not going to poison them against the custodial parent. And it's heartbreaking enough for kids to go through family breakup without having one parent trying to poison them against another. So something needs to change in the sense that we just can't give someone carte blanche access to their kids just because genetically I'm the father.
You know what? This is my opinion. They made coercive control a criminal offence. I absolutely believe, and it's the same. Coercive control was really hard to prove. They should do the same with parental alienation and make that a criminal offence, because it's manipulating a child's mind.
Yeah,
it's literally assaulting a child's mind. So they really should be making that a criminal offence. If they can make coercive control, which is again hard to prove, they should be making parental alienation.
But I think the services, and this isn't, I don't want to get into a thingy of cussing services, but I will. But I think they just need to listen. They need to listen to the parents and actually listen to the children, rather than using families as, well, you're a tick box, we need to get you off the child protection register, blah, 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 blah. And when a parent's saying, please don't take my son to his father just because he's beating the crap out of me at home because it's normalized behavior, please just put him in care for a couple of weeks. Let's review things. Let's talk about things. Please don't take him there because here's the reason why my son's doing this in the first place. And then when they say, no, he's on the birth certificate, and they ship him off, does that make sense to you?
I agree. And you know what?
Stupid.
You know what? Again, and I'm cases that I've had to deal with, they fail to recognise that female victims that have been married to perpetrators or had relationships and got children, due to the abuse, end up self-medicating on alcohol to cope with, and then that escalates to an addiction. So then social services seem to think the children are going to be at harm, so then place the children with a perpetrator there. And actually, instead of addressing the underlying issue, why has she been drinking? She really is the victim of all this. No, perhaps organisations need training.
Yeah, and you know what's really sad about the case we were mentioning earlier was the custodial parent, in this case the mum, is the one that has to jump through all the hoops. And the recognised, known for a fact perpetrator has to do sweet FA.
I agree with you. I totally agree with you. Did I just see someone coming up with a question?
I did, but I'm going to read it. Otherwise, I'm covering your face, Pauline. I don't want to do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move you with Joe, and I'm going to cover his face.
Cover my face.
Right. So, and this is from Jeannie, who does a lot of fantastic work with female survivors. Victims are doubly disadvantaged. First the perpetrator and then the system, society. We feel exasperated by their reluctance to participate in legal actions. This comes from fear, conditioning to believe it is their fault, including society blaming them for not taking up the legal fight. The damage of a violent relationship undermines the victim to a point where they absolutely believe they are the problem.
Yeah. But we want them to know that they are not the problem. Sorry, my love.
Absolutely not. No, it's fine. And then Jeannie said, when we take the children from the victim, we are colluding with the perpetrator. Spot on.
Absolutely spot on. Absolutely spot on.
And then when as a professional, you kind of have a conversation in a child protection meeting to say, well, what do you hope to gain by releasing the child to the perpetrating dad, who we know is, controlling the children to be up on their mum. I mean, literally be up on their mum. Yeah, but he's on the birth certificate. Oh, that was the yeah, but he's on the birth certificate. Yeah, but he's on the birth certificate. I couldn't give a rat's where he is. And it didn't help. Let me tell you, he went, but it didn't help. And so you're absolutely right. Legally, the system has to change. If someone is found of being a perpetrator in the home, it's not just the adult victim. It should automatically be that whoever's in that household are classified as victims. And if you're gaslighting, anything else, coercive control, you get done for it, mate.
You know what? I think the judges in the legal system, I think in the criminal justice system, no problems. I think where the judges and the courts need training is in the family courts. Because that's happening too much. We know that there's going to be reforms there, but actually, you know what? It starts from the family court when they haven't gone through the system, where there's a fight with everything that's going on, and then there's a fight with the children. So it's that they're the ones that actually really need to be starting training on.
Yeah, and imagine how much money they'd save if they invested, I don't know, however many millions in the family courts. And then children are less likely to grow up to become victims or perpetrators. Children are less likely to be permanently excluded from schools and then go on to criminal activity. Not that I'm making an assumption that's what automatically happens, but it has a knock-on effect.
Yeah. I mean, I do worry that in the family courts, and I've heard of one case where they were thinking of giving access to an ex-partner who had offences of a sexual nature to someone under the age of 16. Why would you? What right has someone to see his child when he's got that kind of an offence against him?
How do you make sense of that, Pauline? Being in that system.
I don't understand. I don't understand why social services or CAFCAS, if it's CAFCAS, why don't make that decision? Yes, children have the right to see members, but if someone's got that kind of a conviction behind them and actually had a broke law by having a sexual offence against a minor, they don't have the right to see their children, I don't believe.
No, you need a license to have a dog.
Are we talking about the two-legged kind?
Well, no, because when you go to buy a dog or whatever, they ask you a zillion and one questions. You almost need a license to buy a dog. Yet when you've got a child, just because on your birth certificate it gives you this ultimate right, and that applies for men and women. Whereas actually, if you are a risk, like if you're a risk to a pet, you're not allowed to have it. We went to buy goldfish, Pauline, for my daughters a couple of years ago. Died about 4 weeks later, by the way, but don't tell pets at home. And we were asked about 100 questions. Which side of where does the window face? What size tank do you have? This is how often you need to feed them. Don't do this, do this. Don't do this, do this. And 2 bloody goldfish. Yeah, when it comes to children,
I hear you. How much easier it is for children than it is. No, I hear you.
It's ridiculous. When it comes to children, we know that your father is saying these things to you. We know that your father's manipulating you. We know you don't really want to go to your dad because he's an arse, but he's on the birth certificate.
You know what? I'm also trying to bring together legal representation, right? What I'm trying to do is to, because of my background, excuse me for a second, let me just turn the phone off. Little did I know that someone was going to try and phone. So let's turn that off. What I'm trying to do is to put together, as part of the organisation, multi-agency advisory group, where you've got professionals from all areas that impact on domestic abuse. So not dissimilar to Marak or Amapa, but on my one, what I'm looking to get is legal representation to come on board, so that actually, we can, when we're talking about cases, we can get the heads up on where it may stand in the court of law, whether it's to do with housing or whether it's to do in other areas. And actually, by understanding what could potentially happen in a court, we would be looking at reducing risk to a victim.
Mm.
I think that's really, really important. So we are going to have our in-house. I think you and I have talked about it.
Mm.
You know, and I will be looking at inviting other organisations such as yours to come and sit, because it's about information sharing.
Yeah.
And if you share that information, that you have more chance of reducing risk to a family member or to an intimate partner.
Mm.
It's so important.
Yeah, and I think it's very frustrating for charities such as ours, Enfield Women's Centre, other small charities that are trying to, stop the cycle from repeating itself, support the families. When you're face to face with statutory services that have the ultimate decision, so to speak, and it doesn't make sense. But there's only so much you can fight it.
I think they need training.
Oh, God. I actually stood up once in the middle of a meeting and said, "You need training, love. I'll do it for you for free."
What did you say?
What did she say? Remember, Joe? Because she turned to the parent and said, "It's been 4 years since the domestic abuse. Are you not over it yet?"
What?
Were you there, Joe? Yeah, you were there.
Yeah, I was there. Yeah.
Yeah, he was very embarrassed by my behaviour because I was absolutely livid, and I said, "You know what? That is just disgusting. You need, and she was a social worker manager. I hope she's watching. And do you know what? You need training, and I'll do it for free. You know what? I charge her for you. I'm doing it for free because you fucking need it."
Oi, language.
Oh, it's fine. It's not good. Yeah,
So,
but that's what we're fighting with, Pauline. Or not just us as a system. We're kind of supporting but working against families.
What did she say to you after that?
I shouldn't say anything.
no.
I don't think she could.
I think they labelled her as being aggressive or something along that line, weren't it? It was something like that. So, Pauline.
Yes.
Pauline.
Yes.
If you could change one small thing tomorrow that would make this whole mess a little bit easier, what would you do?
What, as in what? How we?
The whole system, the whole domestic violence system, the way we approach it, the way we deal with it. If there was one small change that would make a difference.
Investment.
Investment.
The system needs investment. If you invest sufficiently, then you're going to get the right organisations. With the right, you're going to get the right programs. You're going to get people talking. You know what? I think the system is broken. It needs investment. Everyone, and everyone should be working collaboratively. Actually, organisations should be working collaboratively, and actually all other organisations shouldn't be looking as competition. You know what?
Yes.
It is investment, right? Because when they see new organisations coming up, they think threat, right? Because they're so worried that they're going to lose their funding. Therefore, the system really does need more funding, whether it's through the courts, whether through the organisations, and actually we can all play a part. Particularly in lockdown, neighbourhood watch groups can play a part. They can look out for their neighbours because they're their eyes and ears of what goes on, right? They can signpost people to the support that they need. But it does need investment. That's the one word.
Pauline.
Yes.
So tomorrow you woke up, you've got all the investment that you want. Where would you start spending the money?
Where would I start spending the money? Now that's an
These are solution-focused questions, Pauline. So tomorrow you wake up and you've got all the money you need. What would you do with it? Where would you spend first?
That's a very, very difficult question.
Yeah.
You know what? I think this might actually be an easy one. Prisons,
Okay.
right? Because our prisons are so crowded, they're less likely to give prison sentences, and they're trying to, give more opportunities to rehabilitate perpetrators in the system, in the community, right? And isn't always the answer. However, if it's needed, it's needed. So the first thing I'll do is invest the money in the prison system, so there's more space, and actually deport the people that is taken up that space and serve their sentences in their countries. Make sure our borders know about these people so they don't come back in, and free up and put some space. Ensure there are spaces that people that need to be in there. I think that's really, you got to start off somewhere, and I think that would be the right place to start off with. I don't know, Joe, what do you think?
Do you know what? I just asked the questions, love. I didn't know I had to think. But I think you're right. I think there needs to be more support in early intervention in schools, the education, what is normal for our children to witness and what isn't, and maybe there's questions around that. So there's that early intervention, supporting perpetrators that really want to change their ways, not the ones that just go picking one victim for another. And like you say,
will not be changed.
If they're not willing to be changed, then like you say, free up some spaces inside our prison system. So
their risk is by like a revolving door you know what, I have seen a perpetrator when I was in court not dissimilar to my one, and the only way, right, those kinds of people are always going to be a risk to females in a relationship, and the only way to manage them is out like a revolving door in prison. They're never going to change. It's everyone else's fault but theirs. And they're just going to continually pose a risk to women. But they target vulnerability in women. So it's I think a good place would be to start in the prisons, so we can free up space.
Yeah, good for you, Pauline.
Yes,
it's been a pleasure, absolute pleasure.
Time has gone. How long will we be?
An hour and 2 minutes.
It's gone so quickly.
We did say you're going to completely forget and it's going to just fly by.
You know what? I thoroughly enjoyed what is a really, really, really serious subject. I've thoroughly enjoyed speaking to the pair of you, and I'm glad a couple of people have opened up and asked questions. If it gets people thinking again, if there's someone out there that is actually behind closed doors going through something, you know what? Find the strength, get that help, support that you need. I know it's hard, but you will get that support from the police. You will get referred, if you're on serious high risk, you'll get referred to Marac. So that there is, and you will get support from victim support. There is support out there, and particularly now we've got a looming lockdown. You do not have to stay at home. It is better for you as a person to leave in a safe way with the help of authorities. Do not stay at home and suffer.
Absolutely.
And for me, you know whatever you're persuaded otherwise, do not believe you deserve this.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean?
As they would say, you are not alone, right? And you are worthy. You know what? I love you guys. I think you are so real. I love it.
Just say how it is, Pauline, isn't it, from North London?
I love it. I cannot wait. You know what? I cannot wait to work with a pair of you, because I think
we can't wait.
I think you are so real, and it's really refreshing to see two people that love doing what they do from the heart, and they have fun doing it. I can see you two. I watch the pair of you.
Yeah, not always a good thing. After lockdown, you need to come and visit us and spend a day in the office with us, and you'll just be like, "Oh my God, my
Oh
hair."
God, Pauline.
When are they going to stop arguing?
At the beginning of lockdown, I think even the way we breathed was up.
Let
Do you
me
know what
ask
I mean?
a question. How are you
Yeah.
coping, right? Because now I'm going to ask you the questions. With lockdown, right, and the risk, people,
Yeah.
how are you coping to
Yeah,
see
yeah.
them?
All through this kind of media, Pauline,
Online.
we're zooming everyone, phone calls, doing training online. In some ways, in some ways, it's opened up a whole new world for us in terms of interviewing great people like yourself that we still haven't met in person, right?
Oh, you're
But
going
yeah, but even over this medium, I feel like you said, I feel there's an affinity, and that we need to meet at some point. So yeah, we've been just as busy, just as passionate. It's just, if you'd have asked me 2 years ago about social media, and I would have said it's destroying our kids, we're not talking to each other anymore. But without it now, I don't know how we would communicate. It's been a godsend.
because I know that you get what happens if you do, because there are going to be victims out there that have got no access to the internet. How we, how we reach out?
Yeah. So our service works with families recovering from domestic abuse where the perpetrator has left their home.
Yeah, good.
So that risk assessment part is, even though the perpetrator will have some sort of access or be manipulating in some shape or form, but what we have done is created like an online, which I think starts next week, like a 6-week workshop for any victim to attend, where we talk about domestic abuse and the recovery process and how it might affect our parenting. So it's whatever the parents want, really. They just come on and say, this is what I'm struggling with. And we talk about it as a group, because that would happen usually in the office. But instead of just saying, we just can't work with you.
Yeah.
So we've had to kind of do it very a light-hearted version so we don't place anyone at risk.
You know what? I'm going to speak to you two separately from this about starting some sort of a campaign on parental alienation, because I'm really sorry. I feel really strongly about that. It is. They need to recognise. I know that so many people have, they've tried to do something, or they parental alienation, but when are they going to realise it's actually it's an assault on a child's mind, and it's abuse of an adult.
Yeah.
Nothing more and nothing less. That's it.
100%, Pauline.
Yeah.
100%.
And we do try and contact the person that's left at home to see if they want to get involved, and we can have discussions with them about their behaviour, but without saying it like that. But 99% of the time, it doesn't happen. But yeah, we can talk about that. Pauline, can I ask you to just stay there? Don't go anywhere. Don't press any buttons. And it's been a very interesting, very fascinating, very informative FBS chat. I've highly enjoyed it. So we thank you so much, Pauline, for just being you.
Well, I thank you.
Really.
Thank you, Pauline, for doing what you do.
Well, thank you.
Good on you.
And so passionately, and we can't wait to have you back on here talking about your book, the release of your book, and everything else is, it's very exciting. So who have we got? Who have we got next on FBS? Right, Friday, actually, at 1:00, we have got Andrew Payne. For those of you who don't know who Andrew Payne is, he was on TED Talk. And he's also been a victim of domestic abuse. So this week we're concentrating a little bit on domestic abuse, but he's a fabulous guy, and he's going to be very, very interesting. So we'll see you Friday at 1 p.m. But Pauline, thank you very much. And this is where we wave. But you stay there, please. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.